Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
Hello, Sydney. Do you like scary movies, Sydney?
Don't you know the rules?
What rules?
You don't... There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. Big no-no! Big no-no!
I'm a dead man.
Even in popcorn, sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. The sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
You see, you push the laws and you end up dead. Okay, I'll see you in the kitchen. Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage, candy. Your core audience just expects it. And number 3, if you want your sequel to become a franchise, never, ever...
How do we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
Is this simply another sequel? Well, if it is, same rules apply. But here's the critical thing. If you find yourself dealing with an unexpected backstory and a preponderance of exposition, then the sequel rules do not apply. Because you are not dealing with a sequel. You are dealing with the concluding chapter of a trilogy. That's right. It's a rarity in the horror field, but it does exist. And it is a force to be reckoned with. Because true trilogies are all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go. Godfather, Jedi, all revealed something that we thought was true that wasn't true.
If you hang up on me, you'll die just like your mother.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek, and this is Loose Cannon. I am one of the Twig video store clerks. I'm Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as I wander down these hollowed aisles of video cassette goodness, but occasionally some DVDs as well. I'm joined by my compatriot, longtime Twig contributor from the lovely state of New Jersey.
It's Ken from This Anime.
And from the place where all hope goes to die, we have...
David Denoyer of Do You Even Movie?
I don't even know where that came from, Dave. I'm so sorry.
I didn't even add from Ohio this time because the last couple of recordings have been like from Ohio, but I haven't done that. My apologies.
Ohio. All right, guys. So we are back here on Loose Cannon, and we're going to be taking a look at a series of movies over the next couple of shows, just because they've come up in our watch queues, and Dave had suggested, well, why the hell not? Why do we not take a trip to the town of Woodsboro? If you know what I'm talking about, you probably have a pretty good idea on where this discussion's going to go. We're going to be talking about the Scream franchise. And if you remember, we talked about the Halloween franchise, and we talked about everything. And here, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it in chunks. You're going to get a couple of different shows. We're going to talk about the first 3, the OG trilogy. We're going to talk about the new trilogy. And then we're going to start to rank these movies, because going back over these, I've got some thoughts. So before we start these movies, we often always go through how everybody discovered these. And normally... I'll go first, just to kind of give these guys a chance to percolate and think about how they came across these movies. So, Dave, Scream 1 came out in what, 97, 96?
96.
96. So, I am in high school at this point. I want to say 96 My wife is in the room. Blair, 96. Was I in grade 10 or 11? Middle finger. Good answer. So anyway, I'm in high school, and I want to say this actually slipped under my radar for a good chunk, but I do remember watching it on VHS. I don't think I'd had a DVD player at this point yet. Because I know my first DVD box set was the Freddy box set that was put out by New Line, which I still think is the best version of that series they've ever put out. I guess at some point we'll have to do Freddy on the show, which I'm sure Dave will be thrilled about that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But yeah, it was just one of those things where I remember everybody around me doing obviously the big fucking quote out of that. Everybody was in love with Neve Campbell, one of the there's no nice way to say this. She's one of the hottest final girls I'd ever seen. And funny piece of trivia is actually from my hometown currently of Guelph, Ontario. She actually went to one of the schools I did a speech at some point last year. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool. Guelph and Neve Campbell, that's kind of neat. I know it's always brought up whenever we do anything local around here when it comes to like fundraising or getting someone famous to come do something. The conversation inevitably always goes, well, could we get Neve Campbell? No, we can't. But yeah, like I don't remember this being much of a thing. At least in my group of friends. I mean, I think I was the only horror movie junkie among them. And I liked it. I think I saw this with my girlfriend at the time. But again, it didn't become the cultural phenomenon in my area. But maybe you guys have a different experience. So I'm going to go to Dave. Then we'll finish out with Ken. All right, Dave. So how did you discover the Scream franchise?
So I would have been 4 years old when Scream came out. So naturally, I was at an impressionable age that I remember being aware of Scream. I don't know if that has to do with VHS trailers or if that was something along the lines of me just seeing them as a kid and just, on TV and whatnot. I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't fall into Scream, though, in regards of actually watching it for as much as I could until I believe it was Fox premiered it, which probably would have been 97, probably like 98, 99, I bet it would have been probably one of those years. Fox did a premiere of it. Like, it was like the world broadcast premiere of Scream, cable broadcast of Scream. And I was watching it with mom and sister, and I remember seeing bits and pieces of it, some kills and everything. But again, on TV, they cut stuff out, obviously. So I remember it being impressionable on me at that point of that viewing of being like, wow, this movie's like actually like really scary and really violent. It was kind of like my first taste and foray into horror of the late 90s, I would say. I didn't actually really get to fully sit down and watch it uncut, complete, until I was probably like 13 or 14, and I rented it from the library. I remember two distinct movies I rented on this library trip. One was Scream and one was Freddy vs. Jason. Freddy vs. Jason was the old New Line 2-disc DVD. And since it was the library, they didn't have like one single case. They had two cases taped together. So disc 1 and disc 2. So I do remember that. But and Scream VHS was literally a VHS tape in a clear plastic case with no cover, no art or anything, and just said Scream printed out on the side. And I had a VCR in my room, so I had a DVD player, so I would get stuff from the library and watch it. And I remember just getting Scream one time because I was like, I've always heard this is a good horror film. I'll finally check it out. Little did I know that I was going to find a franchise that has stuck with me ever since. And the funniest thing about me watching Scream and Freddy vs. Jason back to back was that I remember immediately I went to a church group of some kind. I remember like we had like a lock-in or something that night, and I was talking to my friends in my church group about Scream and Freddy vs. Jason, and I just remember that was like, this kind of is an example of who I am as a person and who I became, even at a young kid, at a young age. But going back to Scream, it it was an experience. Like, I mean, it was one of those things where from the Fox broadcast, I remembered that, spoilers, Billy and Stu were the killers, because I did remember seeing that revealed on TV. When you see that X amount of years later, it's such a good reveal. But also what I love about Scream is it is the movie that really just kind of made me see that there were people like me because of the character Randy. So I immediately latched on to Scream. I thought the kills were excellent. I thought the tension was great. And one thing I'm sure I'll get into more as we get through this is I love the soundtrack. Scream 1 soundtrack especially, phenomenal. So I was very lucky to find this when I did, because this allowed me to get into my junior high and high school time and start showing the Scream films to my friends at the time. And I'm really a big fan of these movies. Even quote unquote the bad ones. I think the Scream franchise as a whole is completely watchable and entertaining, and I'm so excited to talk about these movies.
Yay. All right, then moving on to Ken. How did you discover this franchise?
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I was genuinely a pussy, to quote unquote, when it came to horror movies until about I was a senior in high school.
I see you, Ken. It's okay. I see you.
So I got in through the Saw franchise, and then subsequently went back and went through a whole series of stuff, and Scream was just one of those that came up in the rotation, and yeah, they're fun films, and I like the mystery aspect of them more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what sets Scream apart, because we've been used to your slashers, your Freddys, your Jasons, your Chuckies now. And the horror genre was, I think, in the 90s, that real danger of becoming super stale to the point where it was becoming forgettable, I would argue. And Scream being done by Wes Craven, I mean, obviously the guy knows what he's doing. Nightmare on Elm Street, Shocker, People Under the Stairs, etc. So cool to get this new franchise that was relying on meta for you to know the rules of the horror movie genre. I think that really kind of set the world on fire, and it had such a fantastic cast with it. And Dave, you mentioned Randy. Now, many years ago, we actually interviewed Jamie Kennedy on the show.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, and we had a really good conversation. This was after he released Heckler.
Oh, dude, Heckler is one of those documentaries that I just put on one day, like back in the day of like getting DVDs like cheap at like places and whatnot, and had no idea that I was going to love that documentary. But I will say his segments of that documentary, even though it's his documentary, are some of the most whiniest bullshit I've ever seen.
Now, flash forward to the first time, and hopefully not the last, I had a chance to attend Niagara Falls Comic-Con. If you followed my social media at all, you saw that I met Peter Weller. I met RoboCop. Now, before that happened, Jamie Kennedy happened to be a guest at this convention as well. Yep. Now, Jamie Kennedy, unfortunately, had nobody at his table. He had no line. It was just him and his handler. Everybody else on the floor, fairly busy. Maybe it was just a weird time of day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I roll over in my wheelchair and I see Jamie Kennedy sitting there talking. And I'm thinking, hey, so during the interview, I don't know whether Alex has it up on the archives or not, but anyway, Jamie had said to me, hey, next time I'm in Toronto or Ontario, give me a text or give me a call. Come say hi. Let's hang out. And I thought nothing of it, right? Because every guest says that.
Yeah.
But I decided I'm at this convention. I've just bawled my eyes out to RoboCop. Not even kidding. I need a moment to compose myself. I need something to recenter me. I need to get that feng shui back flowing. So I see Jamie Kennedy. My nerves steel up. And I remember that interview that I did with Jamie. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to go keep a promise. So I roll up to Jamie and his hand like, hi, Mr. Kennedy, how are you? He's like, hey, whatever, and he is fairly pleasant. And I'm talking with him and I said, hey, so I interviewed you about 10 years back. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, my podcast called This Week in Geek, blah, 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 blah. Like you probably don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, but I said to him, I said, hey, so during that interview, you said, hey, if you're ever in Canada, come over, say hi, let's do something. And I was thinking, well, I know you're busy today, and I know you've got a lot going on, but I wanted to keep a promise that was 10 years in the making. And I could just tell on some level, I think he was touched by that, like just that sort of like, oh.
Yeah.
And so I went over there, I shook his hand, did a fist bump, and said, hey, just wanted to say, thank you for being fun. I really enjoyed you in Scream. I've liked you in even the Tremor sequels. I think you're fun. So thank you. Want to keep a promise. Please enjoy the rest of your stay here at Niagara Falls Comic Con.
Mm-hmm.
Have a pleasant day. So I thought that was kind of a nice way to bring that kind of round circle.
Yeah.
So now that we've all talked about Scream, let's get into the pertinent detail. Then let's talk about what made this movie so special. So Dave, hit us.
Hitting you with the pertinent deets, we were talking about Scream from 1996. This film is rated R, and the rating reason, which I always love reading these because sometimes they're really funny, but this one's pretty standard. Rated R for strong graphic horror violence and gore, and for language. There was one I read recently, Birdman, that literally was rated PG for an adolescent punch to the nose.
What? Who writes these things?
I believe the rating was either for Skateboard Kid or Skateboard Kid 2. I can't remember which, but it was one of the Skateboard Kid movies. Going back to Scream, 1996, rated R, 1 hour and 51 minutes. A year after the murders of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a mass killer who targets her and her friends by using scary movies as part of a deadly game. This film is directed by Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson, starring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, Drew Barrymore, Matthew Lillard, the list goes on and on. I think what I genuinely love about Scream is Kevin Williamson did what any smart writer would do, and he drew from reality to get an idea for a horror movie. Because a lot of people don't know, or maybe they do now. I don't know how widespread the knowledge is, or if that documentary really went far. But the Gainesville Ripper is basically what Scream is based off of. Excuse me. Kevin Williamson was house sitting for a friend, locked inside, trying to write, and the Gainesville Ripper was a thing. And so he sees this TV special or this news report on it, and he goes out and just chops out these pages. And for the understanding of where the slasher market is at this point in the 90s, just to give you a taste of a few that were in 90s slasher realm right now, we have, let's see, so you've got Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers.
Yeah.
You've got Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Dr. Giggles, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, Nightbreed, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw 3, Candyman, Leprechaun, Pinocchio's Revenge, Ice Cream Man. I mean, the early 90s slasher market and horror market in general, the offerings are just really odd because they didn't really know what people wanted. And they were having some hits, but they were not really getting much. Scream was a box office blow-up success, smash, whatever you want to call it. It completely revitalized the horror genre, which gives Wes Craven not one, but 2 times now that he's revitalized the horror drama. And there's a third in there too as well. But Scream is key to saying that because, you know, he has Nightmare on Elm Street comes out in 1983. I think we can all agree that Freddy Krueger reinvented horror in a sense because of the way that he was marketed and everything we got out of it for that matter. So when you have Scream come out in 96, then we also have to think about what the hell the like sequels, not only that, but the spin-off movies and the let's do a Scream, but like this, it just blew up to a point where everybody copycatted it because it was so successful. And the reason it's so successful is because it's a damn good horror movie. Probably, I'll go ahead and say it now, even though I know our rankings are going to be 2 episodes away, probably. Scream is the best movie of the series, which I mean, there's no, I don't think it's really much to debate on that. I think that's easy to say from everything that happened with it and the success and just the star power they have. But what I love about Scream most is no matter how many times you see it, because of the reveal of the killers at the end with Stu and Billy, if you go back and watch Scream, there is so much playfulness in this movie between those two that carries through the entire movie to where it's just kind of like another sick joke you get from revisits, not to mention stuff you'll just catch on other viewings. The stars that they got for this movie were fantastic. Neve Campbell, I mean, playing Sydney Prescott became a final girl icon because so many women to this day, so many women, men, everybody can relate to the trauma that she experiences in some way. And the survivor that is inside her, the aspect of the courage that she brings forth, everything that carries over into these movies of Sidney Prescott is key to why this franchise is successful, in my opinion. But most of all, the writing that Kevin Williamson delivers with this meta-ness of, yeah, you've seen horror movies, but have you seen enough of them to survive a killer that literally calls you and asks you questions and will kill you and your friends if you get them wrong? I mean, there's definitely been, people asking questions before and killing. I mean, 1940s movies, you would have people getting interrogated for questions and either having loved ones killed or friends killed or whatnot, if not themselves. So, I mean, but taking a meta-ness to it and being like, you're watching a horror film that's about the love of horror films going way too far for somebody. It's just such a good time. The kills are brutal. The scenes that you have between the tension building of the phone calls coming in and then trying to hide and or run from the killer. The first time you watch Scream, like I said, it is literally an experience. This is just a quintessential horror film, if not just a quintessential film in history because of its execution, its style, its place and time. I think Scream is so enjoyable for many aspects, one of which being that you...
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Are going to get something different from it every time you watch it. I think you can't put a price on that with a movie.
Yeah, like Scream is one of those movies that is quite literally the perfect gateway horror that I really think. Now, we've talked about on this podcast before stuff like Creepshow 2 and, anthologies, Maniac Cop, stuff that is somewhat gateway, but Scream kind of transcends it because it has a fantastically stacked Hollywood cast, amazing charisma, huge stars at the time. This movie made stars of Neve Campbell. Matthew Lillard had already done movies like Hackers. He would become Shaggy in Scooby-Doo. So his star was definitely on the rise. Skeet Ulrich, this will be the role he'll always be remembered for. As much as they wanted to make him a thing, it just never happened. Courtney Cox, to say nothing of her career. David Arquette this is the role that put him on the map, and he's always been a really good supporting actor. Like, I like his movie Ready to Rumble, which is so stupid. We're gonna have to talk about it at like some point. Wrestling movies.
Is it fake? I love that movie. Movie's so ridiculous.
I saw that at a drive-in theater, but anyway, yeah, like this is just, it's one of those movies that just, it knows its audience. It doesn't talk down to its audience. It celebrates it. And I think there's something very special about the power of this franchise, is that it celebrates you. Wes Craven understood that his house was built by Freddy, which is great. Freddy pays the bills.
Mm-hmm.
But now he wants to invite somebody else to dinner. And now that new guest is Ghostface. But not just Ghostface. Like, you look at Nancy Thompson, great final girl, smart, intelligent. Sidney Prescott is just a girl who literally not just survives by being smart, but by being tenacious in a different way. She's different than Nancy. I think Sidney Prescott would reasonably survive a Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
I think Sidney has not only the key elements of fight or flight, with, you know, her final fight between Billy and Stu. I mean, she literally drops a TV on Stu's head, stabs dude with an umbrella. Like, I mean, she goes full hardcore when she has to survive. But then on top of that too, I think what a lot of people forget is that she plays with them a lot throughout this franchise, especially. Like, when she has the upper hand, she has no problem being like, you're in my house now. I've been through these fucking movies. Like, and still retains that trauma and builds off of it to become the survivor that she is. Like, she is never without, you know, the survival instincts of, you know, I'm Sidney Prescott, of course I have a fucking gun. Like, when we get to that point in Sidney's legacy in this series, you know, we have seen somebody go through. I mean, you talk about John McClane going, how can one guy go through the same thing twice? Like, you know, or 5 times, I guess. Sidney Prescott has been through this, done this, bought the T-shirt. I mean, the amount of carnage that occurs to her in these films is pretty freaking ridiculous. But I'm so happy that, like, you know, we still get these legacy points of her. But it all starts with this movie.
Yeah, like literally, Sidney can stand toe to toe. Well, maybe not toe to toe, but definitely on the same mountain as Sarah Connor, as Ripley, Nancy Thompson, and
Thompson, and Laurie Strode.
Yeah, and Laurie Strode. And I would even argue, like, a deadly combination for any mass killer would be Sidney Prescott and Laurie Strode, because they're both pretty fucking smart. Mike Myers and Ghostface, you're kind of fucked, dude. You're not getting out of this.
I think there's an argument that can be made that Laurie Strode has a little bit more, her planning integrity. Oh my God, I can't talk. Her planning integrity is still there. Like, she makes plans really well, has traps set up and all that stuff as we get later in the series. I think she's a little bit more sporadic than Sidney is. Sidney seems a bit more collected and will take time, like I said, to kind of play with the food and to get the upper hand. Laurie will do that sometimes, but I think she's a bit sporadic at, like, you know, first in the series, especially if we're going to count like H2O and Resurrection. I mean, her moves in Resurrection is a whole nother fucking conversation.
Laurie's more shoot first, ask questions later.
Yes.
And Sidney is ask questions and then shoot.
Exactly. I'm going to get answers, then I'm blowing your goddamn head off. But
now, Mike, do you want to hear something funny in regards to tying back to Jamie Kennedy, not only in the Scream franchise? So, you know, on Do You Even Movie, I love to look at the cinematographer, and our cinematographer is Mark Irwin, which, if you are a movie fan, that name should be no stranger to you. Just to give you a few, and I stress a few. RoboCop 2 in 1990, he shoots.
Yeah.
Dark Angel, a.k.a. I Come in Peace. Showdown in Little Tokyo. Passenger 57. Man's Best Friend. Dumb and Dumber. Vampire in Brooklyn. Kingpin. Does Scream in 96. Then goes on to do There's Something About Mary. 10 Things I Hate About You. Road Trip. Me, Myself, and Irene. Freddy Got Fingered. Malibu's Most Wanted in 2003. Grandma's Boy. I mean, it goes on all the way into last year with the retirement plan with Nicolas Cage. So, I mean, you got a guy behind the camera also that is a phenomenal artist. So, I mean, it goes without saying that when you have all these elements just go into one piece of cinema, you're going to have a good time. And I mean, there's so much stacked in the first Scream movie that, like I said, it bears further rewatchings. Even if you've seen it and know who the killers are, you're still going to have a good time with it every time.
Oh yeah, because there's no point in really rehashing what happens in the first Scream movie. Everybody knows what it is by now, but what makes the first Scream movie so rewatchable, I think, is you're right. There's so much stuff that you can pick up on subsequent viewing. The clues are there, but what I love about the Scream franchise, it's what makes me love the Knives Out franchise. And what I mean by that is I love the mystery, the misdirect. And I think that's what makes Scream so enduring, is it has that whodunit mystery. And never before had I seen it done in a large Hollywood movie at the time and executed so well. Because Scream is a franchise quite literally built on the twist. And Kevin Williamson has to literally figure out a way to one-up himself every time.
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And while that maybe gets a little more complicated in some of the later movies we're going to get to, sometimes it really hits the mark. And other times you're like, damn, like I know there are some moments in the new trilogy, which I'll say this now as a preview. I maybe appreciate a little bit more than the OG. So, woo, shots fired.
I'll interject here real quick.
Yes.
You may think shots fired. I will tell you that on reappraisal, a lot of people are hating Scream 2 now. So, and 2 and 3 are not beloved movies as much as the first one is. And there may be some there may be some magic in that old hat to what you just said with the new ones. I will absolutely say that.
Yeah, like it's amazing because you look at how the franchise is trying to evolve. Like, how do I change the game enough where it's something new? Like, I guess to kind of finish out Scream 1, like, everybody here, an amazing performance. The Psych Out with Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
Chef's Kiss. The iconic design of Ghostface, the Father Death costume. Now, my wife, Blair, we've been married since 2011. Huge Scream fan. So a couple of years ago, for Valentine's Day, I decided to splurge a little bit, and I went on the Etsy. And I did not know how big the Scream fandom was, specifically when they come to making authentic props. So I went out and I found a replica of the first Stab movie on Blu-ray for the first time. I got her a replica case of the Stab movie that has a write-up on the back that uses screens from the Stab movies throughout the entirety of the franchise as its backing box art with quotes, a write-up, Dave, just like how you do on Do You Even Movie.
Mm-hmm.
And when you open up the case, it has a coupon for, I guess, a Chapters or Indigo, or maybe it's the Woodborough bookstore. So it's all completely in universe. Or it says, hey, so it's like, hey, do you want to save 30% on Gail Weathers' next book? Blah, blah, blah. Present this coupon. And it's completely in universe. So The coolest thing I got out of this was me and Liam, longtime friend of the show. We are huge movie fans when it comes to iconic weaponry. And for Christmas, I've been given Jason's machete from part 4, which is an authentic build of the 1984 machete. I have the Hawkbill machete from Friday the 13th part 2, which is where the guy gets the machete through the face in the wheelchair. Hopefully not a sign of things to come. But this year, Liam did something really awesome for Blair. So Liam loves knives, and that is an understatement of the century. So I'd mentioned to Liam, hey, I want to get Blair something for Christmas this year. And I've been trying to track down a good Scream mask with the voice changer. Harder than you might think to get a good quality one, and to get the voice changer, that's what makes the cost significantly go up. I'm still looking. But Liam had done something outstanding. So he knew the knife that Ghostface uses is a Bowie knife, which is a buck 120.
Mm-hmm.
An amazing weapon. So this year, it's around Halloween time, and we're all sitting down here, we're watching movies or something. This is when me and Liam were going to the movies like every week. And he comes over and he hands Blair this leather case. And I'm thinking, I don't know what that is. So he hands her this knife, and he pulls out the Scream knife, the buck 120. Now, I posted this in our chat just kind of recently. And what makes this knife so special is when you look at how brutal the attacks are in the Scream franchise.
Oh, yeah.
Almost all of them are done with the buck 120. And that's the thing. Jason has his machete, but it changes up. Mike Myers has the kitchen knife, but it's pretty consistent. It's a butcher's knife. But the buck 120 knife, the models may change slightly movie to movie, but it's always a buck knife, more or less.
Yeah.
But what makes this thing so iconic to me is you have to hold one of these knives to really get the feel for it, to kind of put yourself in the mind of a psycho, if I'm going to be really crazy for just 30 seconds here. And I think about how badly Stu and Billy carved up Drew Barrymore's boyfriend. When you think about how bad guys get stabbed in these movies.
Steve's intestines literally are presented to us. Like, I mean, that is one of the first kills that we get is Steve, and Steve's guts are literally cut out of his body. I mean, if you've ever seen the director's cut, which is only available on Laserdisc or VHS, I believe, if not both, there's a lingering shot of it, and like intestine just falls like and hits the ground and whatnot. It's so brutal. And I mean, you bringing up the knife is a good point, because that's one thing that they are very clear about in these movies. The violence is not light in any of the movies. Like, any of the kills, no matter how, like, you know, bloody they are or whatnot, the brutality is always there. And especially Drew Barrymore's opening kill, man, it's a bit hard to watch sometimes, just because of the final, her grabbing the mask off, and you see that she gets to see who her killer is, and then that final blade comes down, but like then she's dragged through the grass and her parents are hearing her on the phone. And I mean, we don't have to break down the movie, but like breaking down the kills themselves would be enough to give you the display of horror and brutality and just genuine slasher in these movies.
Oh yeah, like Drew Barrymore's kill specifically is when she's crawling through the grass and she's bleeding out. There's like, even if she had a trauma center right there, you're probably not going to survive this. And what makes me remember that scene just before she grabs the mask and unmasks whoever it is who killed her, she croaks out "Mom."
Oh, well, her mom's on the phone. Yeah. And her parents have come home because the popcorn's burning on the stove and everything. And yeah, they pick up the phone to call 911, and yeah, you hear her. Yeah. I mean, that is, I don't want to call that a trope, because I don't think it's like super common, but that is something in movies that will give me goosebumps every time, is just like hearing the unknowingly final death rattles of a loved one, friend, etc., because of like a call or something happening. Like, I guess I'll call it a trope at this point. It's a trope that I love because it always fucks with me, and especially this movie, because you just get to see the horror on her parents' faces as they're hearing this and the call hangs up.
And again, because it's Drew Barrymore, you don't expect that from such a significant Hollywood star at the time.
No, they pulled a Psycho. They gave us the Janet Leigh starring title just so like Drew Barrymore in Scream, and then they kill her like just minutes into the movie. So I mean
this has become kind of the trope of the franchise. We're going to have a opening kill that
is a Psycho,
is going to be big.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, as we get further into the sequels too, they did that to a degree of both. We expected it, so then they started throwing humor at us too.
Yeah,
but
became
then
absurd.
also, it became absurd. But then also, you didn't know what was real and what wasn't, which kind of became the fun part of it too, in some aspects. But I think honestly, to wrap up Scream 1, you can say that this was the roadmap that it laid for where horror was going in the 90s and into the 90s, because that mentality of a Scream type horror film, slasher film, whatever you want to call it, stuck with us for a good bit. And we got so many copycats on the market that you could literally start a whole new podcast just talking about the copycats that Scream created, or the direct ripoffs that Scream created, for that matter.
It's the granddaddy of that, of
meta,
the last.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like as Ken mentioned, like this is the granddaddy, and as we move into Scream 2, and Dave, as you had just said just a moment ago, this is when the copycats start to hit hard. You had I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend. What are some of the other ones?
By the same
Kevin Williams,
Right.
Kevin Williamson. He kind of stretched his legs, because just to give you a brief taste of what happened to him when Scream took off. So, regards to his writing resume at this point, so Scream is literally the first thing listed on his IMDb. So that is what he gets credit for. But then he immediately goes.
I believe he said he was basically a script doctor for a lot of
he was a fixer,
and then he finally got the chance to. Someone picked up Scream, and he was super excited.
Yeah. And as Ken said, he immediately goes and does I Know What You Did Last Summer in 97. Then he goes and does Scream 2 the same year, follows that with The Faculty, Teaching Miss Tingle, character credit in Scream 3. Then he writes on Dawson's Creek, of course, because he gets that start as well, and he becomes the creator of that series and 128 episodes of that series. So, I mean, he started something, not only his career, obviously, but he started a ripple into the franchise. Him and Wes Craven started a ripple into the franchise that spread into horror to where even sitcoms were having Scream jokes, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I seem to recall that, actually. I seem to recall a lot of sitcoms at the time doing the Ghostface reference, doing a whodunit episodes. I want to say even the Drew Carey show did something around this time.
Yeah. No, they absolutely did. And the fact that Scream 2 literally comes a year later just goes to show you the success, because they immediately were just like, whoa, get another one going, guys. Let's go. Let's keep this going.
And it's weird because you look at horror and franchise fatigue. This is a franchise that could have very easily gone that way, but with the Scream movies coming fairly rapid paced until later, where you get multi-year gaps, Scream had the potential to run itself into the ground like your Jasons, like your Freddys, like your Chuckies. Because I remember between Child's Play 2 and 3, there was like a year.
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
maybe even 9 months. And with this being greenlit so fast, I don't even remember there being much of a marketing campaign for Scream 2. And what I mean by that is I don't remember a lot of buzz. It's almost like it was just boop and it was there. Now, I remember Scream 2 becoming more of a big deal because everybody had caught on to the gag by then, like, oh, it's elevated horror, it's super smart, it's a movie within a movie. And obviously, again, you had stars like Jerry O'Connell. I know him mostly from Sliders. I think he's a voice of Superman at some point. You get Jada
Timothy
Pinkett Smith.
Jada Pinkett Smith. Oh my God! I mean, the
The
list
girl
goes
from
on and
Roseanne.
on.
The girl from
Laurie
Metcalf.
Yeah, Metcalf.
And again, just fantastic because again, it raises the stakes. It changes the kind of location. But the fact that it changes the whodunit, like, well, Stu and Billy are dead. Who could it possibly be? And what I love about the Scream franchise, and there's a guy, I want you to seek this guy out on YouTube. Fantastic YouTuber. His name is CZ's World. And he focuses a lot on horror movies. And he does a wonderful breakdown of the stab movies as they happen in universe. And you could actually piece together a chunk of the stab movie where you could technically watch it if you wanted to. And he also does a timeline of the life and times of Billy Loomis. And you're like, oh. And you just, again, all these movies create this wonderful continuity that the Scream franchise, I think, does exceptionally well, almost to the point of parody. It fills out its lore enough where literally Woodsboro is the town of psychopaths and adultery. Wonderful place, wonderful tourism, I'm sure. And again, it builds out the lore of the world. And as you mentioned, Sydney, once again, oh boy, people are dying around me.
Yeah,
but again, you see the effect of technology that I love in these movies too, where people start pranking Sydney when she's in her dorm. She's like, "Do you like scary movie? Hi, are you 555?" And the guy's like, shit.
The caller ID, yeah. The caller ID, I think, is a beautiful thing because that became more prevalent. And I love, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but I love how they adapt to cell phones and all that stuff as we get further into the sequels of everything, because that is something that, can be challenging for a writer, is to figure out how to make the phones not usable or how to incorporate them but not make it to be the problem solver to call the police and everything. And I think they handle that super well. But yeah, the introduction of caller ID in Scream 2 is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, 100%. So like I said, a lot of my memories with this, I remember people talking about this. I remember renting this on VHS with my friends. I remember us hanging around my friend's basement, us going to Pizza and going to Blockbuster, renting this with me and my girlfriend, my friend Nathan, my buddy Ryan, and my girlfriend Ashley at the time. And again, all of us liking it, having a grand old time. And yeah, that's pretty much a lot from my memories. Ken, what about you? And then we'll bounce to Dave, and then we'll kind of talk about Scream 2.
Basically, Scream 2 was just like, I binged watched 1, 2, and 3 basically within a couple of days of each other. So I watched it just about the same time as Scream 1. And I'm not necessarily a fan of this one specifically. I think it has good elements to it, but I think there are some faults that I see looking back at it.
Oh, definitely. No, I mean, definitely. I think Scream 2 is the epitome of a sequel.
Yes.
Which I guess, Dave, will just bounce to you. What was your first exposure to this? And then I guess we'll kind of jump into it.
Yeah, Scream 2 became available to me simply because of how much I love Scream 1, obviously. Because by the time that I saw the first Scream, 1, 2, 3 were all out. Were all readily available. I could go rent them at the store. But because I loved Scream so much, I didn't jump to the sequel right away. I do that sometimes. With certain movies, I'll do that sometimes, where it's just like, I love the X. I don't know if I'm going to love Y, but I'll hold on to X for a little bit before I check out Y. it's kind of funny, thinking about it that way, but that is something I do sometimes. And that was one of those times. It wasn't until I had friends over or I had gone to a friend's house and we rented Scream 2 because I'd showed them Scream specifically. And I remember genuinely enjoying it the first time I watched it. And, and getting that box set that you mentioned previously. Yeah, I had that box set too and loved that box set. That Scream box set was incredible. So I remember, watching this one and enjoying it and whatnot. But I will say, going back recently, I would say probably in the last couple of years, it is definitely one of the weaker ones. I think Scream 2, like I said, is the epitome of a sequel. You up your body count, you make your kills more graphic, you make your production bigger, you get more stars. I mean, for fuck's sake, David Warner is in this movie at one point.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he's like the professor, just because
he's the guy that's leading the theater production. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely got a great opening to where we are going to the opening night of Stab, the movie that's based off the events in Scream in Woodsboro, and then a murder happens at the screening, and people think it's fake, and it's done in a ghost face, and there's a bunch of ghost face. The opening is probably one of the best things about this movie. You have Sydney now in college. She's doing her thing. Stab gets released, and then murders start happening again on campus, but they're all once again tied back to Sydney and Woodsboro and everything. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed my first go around with it was the reveal at the end. At the time when I saw it, the reveal at the end, spoilers, that it's Billy's mom, who is played by Laurie Metcalf and is the reporter that posing in the movie. And then you had Timothy Olyphant, who's like her little puppy, except, she executes him right away, which, why wouldn't she at that point? I thought that reveal was cool, but as I've watched it recently, it's kind of gone in a way that's just like, how did Sydney not recognize her right away? I mean, I know they make the line about, put on weight, blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's kind of a weak turn. And that's one thing I will also say, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think as we get further into movies, some of these killer reveals are not the smartest, and some of the acting is a choice. And I would say, in regards to Scream 2, there's things I like, there's things I don't like. It's not a sequel that I will not have any problem throwing on. I love, I love the Scream movies in general, even the bad ones, quote unquote bad ones. But Scream 2, I think, is definitely one of the weaker ones. But when I watched it originally, it just made me love the franchise even more. And I mean, there's still truth to that to this day.
Yeah, there's something about Scream 2 that does make the franchise more endearing, but unfortunately, it's the very epitome of a sequel. You see some strengths, but now you're starting to see some cracks in the armor, which, again, when you up the stakes, Randy's having a conversation with Dewey in a diner, and they're talking about the rules of sequels, and this is sort of a foreshadow of Randy's death. This, I felt, was one of the biggest mistakes the franchise made, was killing Jamie Kennedy's character. And not because he's a beloved character, which he is. The fact that Randy, besides Sydney, was such a cornerstone, a survivor of Woodsboro that added context, that added stakes to thing. I think what I would have done, had I been Kevin Williams in this case, I wouldn't have killed Randy. I would have maimed him. I would have made him the guy in the chair, which is funny because I'm disabled. But what that would have done, I feel, is would have turned Randy into Dr. Loomis from the Halloween franchise. And what I mean by that is,
I can see that.
Yeah, like you want a character who can do exposition, who is an expert, who is a victim of the killer, but is smart enough to, keep their distance, but also when they become relentless, they become a threat themselves. I would have saved Randy's death until number 3 or something, because basically he doesn't get a happy ending, but the fact that Randy dies, frankly, like a bitch, kind of sucks, because again, he gets pulled into a van when he's calling out Ghostface, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you."
Well,
like, oh yeah,
he's not calling out Ghostface. It kind of ties into the reveal at the end. He's calling out Billy and Stu and calling them pussies and saying Billy was a mama's boy. And Laurie Metcalf reveals that Randy said some things about my son, and I got a little knife happy with him. I don't think his kill was planned. I don't think she was going to kill. Yeah, she was hiding in the van, but I don't think Randy was necessarily, quote unquote, supposed to die. I think Randy was a victim of wrong place, wrong time in the heat of passion with a mama that you just said bad things about her boy that you technically were part of killing.
Yeah, I mean,
I think there's a line you can kind of draw there.
Yeah, sure, but I think even I believe there was a.
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
More recent interview with Kevin Williamson, and even he admits, yeah, killing Randy was a bad idea.
Oh yeah, I mean that's just because he's a beloved character. I mean, and he kind of was the one that would solve the Rubik's Cube of the sequels and gave us the rules. Comes back in the third one via a VHS tape to give us the rules. I mean, come on. I mean that should show you the importance of his character right there.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, to speak about something negative about this, and this is by no means to denigrate the actor, making Laurie Metcalf the killer, the mastermind behind all this. Oh, that was a choice.
Yes.
Which, again, most of my experience with her came from Roseanne. Not a bad thing. And especially in later years, recently seeing her in Roseanne and The Conners, you really see she's got some really fantastic acting chops when she becomes a lesbian on TV. Strong character actor, can really put herself through some paces. But when she became the killer in this, the problem is when she was cast. And again, that is not her fault.
Yeah.
It's the cultural view of her at the time. It would be like making John Goodman a bad guy in the 90s. It would not have worked. Because, you know, he would have been doing Big Lebowski at the time, obviously coming off of Roseanne, King Ralph, Matinee. You know, it doesn't work.
90% sure he played a bad guy in the 90s, bud.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, but he's still so warm and beloved.
But that's not one of his villainous roles that people remember.
Yeah,
people remember him.
I get that. Okay, no, I get you. I get
more
recent.
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like I think that's what took me out of the movie, was having Laurie Metcalf be the bad guy. I was like, oh. I mean, Timothy Olyphant. I like him, but he's always. I mean, I like him, but he's always looked like a weasel to me.
He's weird in this movie. Like like before he became Raylan on Justified, and like, you know, was I love him in The Girl Next Door.
I love him in Dreamcatcher, and I know that's a choice.
What does he say? Eat my ball bag is like his last words before he actually literally gets eaten. But no, Timothy Olyphant was an interesting casting, and I'm happy they did it. I don't want to say that I don't like the killers of this movie, but yeah, I think all three of us can agree that they are definitely weak in this one. The reveal of them is weak. Also, I think it goes without saying that sometimes you suffer from too many characters, and this is absolutely one of those movies where there's just too many characters. There's too many storylines going on. The love interest between Jerry and Neve Campbell is not bad, but like the whole sorority aspect. Should I go ahead and give the pertinent deets, by the way? I just realized. Scream 2, 1997, 2 hours in runtime, rated R for strong horror violence and language. Once again, directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. Synopsis: 2 years after the first series of murders, as Sydney acclimates to college life, someone donning the Ghostface costume begins a new string of killings. I think putting it in college was absolutely a good choice. Where I think they really messed up was this is at the height of Scream, obviously, because, the huge success, we're getting a sequel. So they threw a bunch of teen stars in it. I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar appears at one point. You've got Rebecca Gayheart in it. Matthew Lillard in a secret cameo at the party at one point. There's just a lot going on in this movie that I feel like takes away from the killings. One of which being a storyline they really should have leaned more into, in my opinion, because he kind of becomes a throwaway character at the end of this movie. Cotton Weary. Cotton Weary, who was blamed for Sydney's mother's murder in the first movie and was, going to be on death row, and then everything comes out about Stu and Billy being the ones that killed her. And then Cotton Weary is running around all over this movie trying to get an interview with Sydney, trying to get his 15 minutes of fame and whatnot. And it's just a storyline I feel like they could have done more with, but we worry more about the love triangle going on between them. And even Dewey and Gail's, love story going on and whatnot. There's a lot going on in this movie that takes away from the central element of survival instincts and what is going on in the world of Woodsboro, even though we're not there right now and whatnot. I feel like there are too many cooks in the kitchen on this one, even though Williamson is only the credited writer on it.
I feel it does more world building than it does anything else. If I had to say a big flaw about this, is it makes Woodsboro this weird center of the universe, but nothing happens. And by having too many characters, you kind of don't care. I mean, you had Sarah Michelle Gellar in this movie too, who was blowing up because of Buffy at the time. She would later go on to I Know What You Did. So huge starlet, and she just kind of gets off going whoopsie daisy and gets thrown off a building. Like
while watching, what is she watching on TV? Is it Nosferatu? I think she's channel surfing and comes across Nosferatu, and then she ends up becoming one. I also think it goes without saying that Scream 2 does something that 2 and 3 do that I think I'm kind of happy they changed a bit in the later sequels. They went a little too hard into the movie aspect of it, because we have the success of Stab coming out, and then the next one we're going to be on a film set and whatnot. And then from there, they kind of went into nostalgia of Scream versus incorporating directly like movie stuff and whatnot to a point of it being a central plot point. Not saying that, the rules do not change throughout the movies. They absolutely do. And we stick with the Stab franchise, the entire thing. And I love that. But with 2, you've got Stab coming out, the opening scene at the thing happening. I think if we wanted to just throw out something that I just thought of while I'm sitting here, I think if you wanted to do a unique take with Scream 2, and maybe this is too big, and maybe that's why they didn't do it, and also this is just my idea, so there's no telling if this is even thought of, but you could almost have it to where Stab makes a lot of copycats happen, or puts a fever onto the town in that sense of it. But I think what you have with the story continuing of the vengeance that they want to take on Sydney, and you didn't get the right killer the first time, or you didn't get all the killers this time, I think it just becomes a bit more stretched as we get into 3, especially. But I think 2 has, like I said, I think 2 has a lot of good things. I think it's got some fun moments in it. But yeah, I think what it suffers from most is there's a lot of storylines. Like the whole thing with the play. Like I think it's cool for the theatrics, but the whole incorporation of the play and Ghostface stalking her on stage at one point in the play, and then the finale taking place on the stage. Again, it's just like we lean a little too hard into the showmanship of the horror movie aspect for Scream 2 and 3, in my opinion.
100%. Like, I think Scream 2, and you guys hit it right on the head, it's the very epitome of a sequel, where it feels like there's a lot of cool set pieces and a lot of cool gags, but some of it almost feels disjointed and like, hey kids, here's David Warner. Just stuff kind of gets thrown at the wall to see what sticks.
There's a point where it gets to like, I get it. Like, I hate saying it like that, but it's like, no, I get it. Like, I get it. Like, you movie, it's okay. I get it. Like, you can keep going with the movie now. You don't have to like, It's like, no, I get it. Like, it's just, it kind of feels a bit insulting to the viewer in some aspects and some points.
Yeah, like, it feels like Scream 2, it knew the assignment. It tried to do razzle dazzle, but maybe they bedazzled it up a little too much. And I like the idea of the meta commentary of the movie within a movie, turning Gale into kind of a scumbag. Again, I get it. I do. But it almost feels like this could play one of two ways, and it definitely plays into number 3, which we're going to go into right now. So number 3 is a movie I know I did not see in theaters. It is another VHS rental with, again, Nathan, Ashley, Ryan, another Friday night wasted in my friend's basement. And I remember not liking this movie a whole lot upon first watch. And just watching it again recently for this podcast, there are parts of this I like and parts of it I don't. And I feel like parts of this would have been an interesting way to end the Scream franchise. But on the other hand, I'm kind of glad it kept going because there is enough gas in the tank to make it interesting here. Should this have been the end of Sidney Prescott's character where she gets her happy ending, lives in the woods, and happily ever after with the memory of Woodsboro long behind her? No, because the universe is not going to work that way in this one. But this one became so meta where it became stupid. And I know there was studio interference in this one. And we all know what I'm talking about. So let's just get that out of the way. Jay and Silent Bob show up in this. Now, I like Kevin Smith. I do.
Connie
I like
fucking
Jason Mewes. I
Chong.
do.
Hey, Connie, how's Maury?
Yeah, it's the chick from the TV. And I remember, now, again, someone had pointed this out to me on YouTube.
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia, movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
But Stu, in his house in the first movie, has a copy of Clerks in his house. So does this mean that Silent Bob is a character in the Scream universe, or is Kevin Smith an actor in the Scream? Like, we're talking the Marvel levels of the multiverse of madness here. And I think someone had made the point of, okay, so in theory, if Silent Bob exists in Scream, so does Stan Lee. By extension, the Avengers exist in the universe of Scream, which means, was Sidney Prescott Thanos at one point? This speculation I'm putting out there, folks, because I've thought about this way too much. But there are parts of this movie I really like. Liev Schreiber as Cotton Weary. Again, but feels unnecessary. The idea of Roman being this obsessed movie person and, having Lance Henriksen and how it all ties back to Woodsboro and how it all ties back to this movie studio that had been around and corruption and this, that, and the other thing and affairs and people sleeping around. This is the first 2 Scream movies. Somewhat I like, the last 2 Scream movies, I like the characters. I like the idea of lore being built. But Dave and Ken, you've hit it right on the head when you said too many cooks in the kitchen, because now this is where you're tripping over each other for continuity's sake.
Well, and Scream goes Hollywood. Like this is that movie where
that's the whole point of this movie is the meta-ness. We're going meta on meta.
Yeah, and we're going meta to a point that is, oh God, how do I say this? We're going meta to a point that is not necessarily not fun. There is, again, with 2 and 3, there are fun points to these movies, but it's a epitome of a sequel. Once again, it's just like we up the body count, we make incredible sets, one of which, you know, is an actual recreation of Woodsboro and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of cool things to like here. I'm going to go ahead and give the pertinent real quick.
Yes.
So, Scream 3, 2000, rated R once again, this time for strong horror, violence, and language. Well, hey,
you don't say.
Once again, directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson for characters. This was actually written by Aaron Kruger. Aaron Kruger, who you may not know, also recently did the screenplay for Top Gun Maverick, Tim Burton's Dumbo, one of my personal favorites from the late 90s, Arlington Road, which is a great thriller. Scream 3 is the story while Sydney and her friends visit Hollywood set of Stab 3, the third film based on Woodsboro murders, another Ghostface killer rises to terrorize them. Scream 3 is not a bad movie in regards of what it brings to the table for the Scream franchise, which is an explanation of another killer that we have and that Sydney had a secret brother. And, you know, it's got a lot of things to like. Where we have an issue with Scream 3 is you can definitely tell, as you said, Birdman, there was trouble with the production. The trouble with the production was the screenplay leaked, like was stolen from from Wes Craven's like email, like an hour after it was sent or whatnot. Like it leaked heavily. Like we're talking about the time when screenplays would leak on AOL and shit. So this was one of those points where you had a loving like fan base that also would steal shit constantly, including screenplays. And that's what happened was the killer leaked. So there were multiple screenplays drafted with different killers. So some people didn't even know what they were going with, who was the killer. Like, I mean, there were times that apparently Gail Weathers was the killer at one point too. So there's a lot going on in this movie that definitely was too many cooks in the kitchen once again, troubled production, all that stuff. But I think what we have here is they didn't know what they wanted to do with Sydney's character, which is why the idea was she goes into hiding in Los Angeles, it still makes no sense to me, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I get that it's on the other
like
side of the fucking world.
Possible idea.
Yeah, I get it's on the other side of the U.S. because Woodsboro is in Ohio, isn't it?
Yes.
No, I think Woodsboro's in California because they're so close to the studio for the movies.
Is that right? Oh man,
Yep.
For some reason I thought she went into hiding like on the other side of the U.S., but I guess that's my bad.
I think she went in the hiding in Northern California because
so she's still in the state, but she's okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, I think taking it to Los Angeles, taking it to Hollywood was definitely a choice. And we do have a pretty cool opening with Cotton Weary, even though it's pretty weak that he gets off that quickly and whatnot. And also, let's not forget that, ladies and gentlemen, Creed is on the soundtrack for this movie. And I actually am somewhat of a Creed fan. And the two songs that they have in this, which I believe is What If, which they did a music video for with David Arquette, which I still will watch from time to time. But no, the opening of the movie with them killing off Cotton and being kind of more so makes the movie feel unsafe, but I feel like we don't get to actual unsafe, like where we are feeling in danger until we get to like 4 and 5 in the franchise. I still feel like 2 and 3 played a little safe, even with the death of Randy and whatnot, and the fake out death of Dewey in the second one as well. But 3, it just doesn't feel like there's much danger in regards of losing major characters, even when we have this huge showdown at a mansion that Lance Henriksen owns. And I mean, for fuck's sake, the star power in this movie, not to mention Jay and Silent Bob, but I mean, you got Roger Corman, you got Lance Henriksen, you've got Carrie Fisher at one point, which is a beautiful joke in the movie too. Parker Posey. I mean, there's so many, Patrick Warburton, there's so many names once again in this movie. That is fun for it and everything, but I think where it loses a lot of its enjoyment is it gets to a point where it's like, okay, seriously, like how many people can be in Sydney's life secretly at this point? Like it's the reveal of the brother, the secret brother and whatnot.
We have gone full comical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like full goofy.
fucking weak. Like, and I remember the first time I watched it that I was just like, oh, that's so cool. And like, you know, again, like I was with friends and we'd rented it and whatnot. And again, got that box set, watched it many times. And I'm just like, that's such a cool twist. The older I've gotten, I've been like, that is such a weak fucking twist.
Yeah, like it's just when you start to take Scream Hollywood, when you start to lean too meta into the meta, this is where I start to feel, to make a very weird comparison here. I think it's like that movie, it's that Eddie Murphy movie where they run into not McDonald's, but it's McDougal's.
No, McDowell's.
Yeah, McDowell's. This is what
Coming
that
to America.
feels like. Yeah, like this is what that feels like. And what I mean by that is, hey kids, it's the Big Mac. But it's not. It's like, it's so like, you don't need to go this hard. Again, really likable characters in this. Like, I like a lot of the characters. I like a lot of the setup and the world building here. But the execution just feels so goofy. I did not need the Jay and Silent Bob cameo, the secret brother who's an obsessed movie or failed movie director and everything. I'm thinking it's stupid.
Well, not to mention too, I hate saying this like this, but we've got to give unfun credit to where unfun credit is due. It's topical to the Me Too movement because there's a whole plot line of what happened to Sydney's mother going to Hollywood under the name Rena Reynolds and getting a career with John Malcolm or something like that? I can't remember. I can't remember what they call him, but the director that Lance Henriksen plays, it's there's a whole topical thing of, you know, hey, we'll give you a career, but you got to give us your body basically, and give it to my friends at these wild parties I have. Like, there's some topical stuff in here that also kind of makes revisiting it a little bit more unfun in this later day. But I mean, again, it is a good plot point in setting up what is bringing Sydney to Hollywood in that aspect. I will say that like the curiosity of her mother and finding out that she was on set. But yeah, I mean, there's some topicalness here that also makes this movie unfun now.
Well, there's also and even I believe Wes Craven later said that was intentional.
Oh, of course it
Very
was.
obviously
Craven was no stranger to calling anybody out if he had to.
Yeah,
like,
and he was literally calling out, "He who shall not be named."
Yeah.
Yeah, like
on his own funded movie. I mean, that's pretty fucking ballsy. Because I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. Weinsteins are behind these films.
Oh yeah, and this was what was keeping the studio going until the Lord of the Rings stuff hit. So like New Line survives a lot on franchise, and it needed a hit because, like I said, Lord of the Rings would have been like 2001, I want to say, was the first one. So, which we're going to talk about those at some point on this podcast in the near future. But it's like, I don't know, there's just something about Scream 3 that feels so, and I hate to say this, so forgettable.
Absolutely.
Like there are some cool kills in this, but I only reason I remember them is because they happen to famous people. Like, I remember the Patrick Warburton kill because it's so goofy.
Hear that? That's the beginning of a journey powered by the confidence that comes from driving a vehicle so reliable, it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Where your journey ends? Well, that's up to you. Visit your local Kia dealer today. Kia. Movement that inspires.
See retailer for warranty details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I think it's safe to say you can't forget a sequel, because if you remember the original movie and whatnot, it's hard to forget the sequels. I'll give you a perfect example. I completely forgot we had a Firestarter remake about a couple years ago.
Which I actually kind of liked, surprisingly.
I enjoyed it. I actually went back to my letterbox and I was like, oh, I gave it like a 3.5, so I must have enjoyed it. But that movie completely bounced out of my brain. I didn't until something came across recently. I think I was browsing through a library or something on a streaming app, and I was like, oh, there's a Firestarter remake, and then I remembered I saw it. Scream 3. I think it's hard to say it's forgettable in the aspect that it's a part of a franchise, but I think it's one of those movies that it's not one that you're going to pull out and revisit.
You can set it and forget it, kind of.
Set it and forget it. Yeah, I would say. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It is absolutely one of, if not the weakest of the franchise, though.
Which I was going back and rewatching these with my wife the other day, and I got to thinking for about a week. I was thinking, if this was the end of Sydney's story where she gets rid of her secret brother, she's killed Billy Loomis's mom, most of the traces of Woodsboro have been left behind her. Anybody with like a biological stake in it is now gone. Okay, cool. But then I went back and I've been really thinking about it, thinking, I don't know how I feel about this movie. I'm very conflicted because when they bring back Randy via the VHS, via his sister, okay, kind of clever, and it's kind of funny how they pull that off, where they're like, so-and-so? Yes, so-and-so. Okay, that's kind of clever writing. I get it. Fine, sure. The killer reveal in this, overly complicated for the sake of overly complicated, and like you're right, it's completely topical to the time with Me Too and Weinstein and everything else, and it makes it a little bit of a weird watch.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, this is the very definition of set it and forget it, and that sucks. Where it's funny, I used to hold the first 3 Scream movies in pretty high regard. Now the first one is untouchable, and every sequel in the original Sydney trilogy has standout moments. But when you break down the Voltron lions as individual lions here, you're like, oh, that's kind of weak, and that's kind of a choice. Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel about this movie. It's like, you have such a strong foundation that you tend to look past the flaws in this movies. And I feel like the Scream movies, in a very meaningful way, get a very big pass via the lens of it being so smart, meta, and incredibly well cast. But when you look at the different parts of that makes the whole, you start to realize there's a lot more flaws in this than what I think originally held it together. Like, I'm not saying it's being held together with popsicle sticks and a dream, because there is a strong skeleton here. The problem is that skeleton has osteoporosis at times, and one wrong step could bring the entire thing crashing down. And that's the problem, I think, with some of the Scream movies. You have a wonderful set of lore. You start to build all these intricate backstories where you're like, okay, this character knew this guy, this character knew this guy, on this date he was doing this. So you start to weave yourself in and out of all these different plot points, and all it takes is one person in the wrong place at the wrong time to upset everything, and it brings the entire house of cards crashing down. And I think that's one of the strengths of this franchise, because it is so careful with how it's constructed its whodunit. But at the same time, if you mess that up, you mess up the entire movie.
Well,
and
I'm gonna go ahead and interject real quick.
Yeah, please.
I think one of the most frustrating things on a recent rewatch of Scream 3 in preparation for this episode, I never picked up on what the ending of this movie technically could mean in 2 ways. Now, the first way is Sydney is home, her friends are there, they're going to watch a movie, and, she goes over to the room and the door opens. The door to her house opens, she looks at it and walks away. Originally, what I intended that was that's Sydney's happy ending. She doesn't fear what's outside anymore. She's actually willing to let it in. In hindsight, having now, been through these movies multiple times, that's literally them saying, hey, we're leaving the door open. There might be another one coming. You don't know. Like it fucking feels like a slap in the face. Like you go and do a Hollywood movie and then you end it with a, well, we're leaving the door open on this franchise, wink wink. Like I fucking hate it now. Like the more I think about it in that aspect, I hate it.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of give our concluding thoughts on the Scream 1 to 3 franchise, you cannot touch the original. The characters created here, the world and lore that has been created from this, great. The idea of a meta slasher that literally evolves as the storyline goes and kind of gets aspects right and aspects wrong of the world. The fact that there's YouTubers like CZ's World that have put together a timeline that literally there's another guy out there, like I mentioned earlier, has cut together the Stab movie so you can literally watch it in time with the original. And there's technically alternate versions of Stab within universe. There's like a director's cut, there's a producer's cut, which is kind of a funny joke. Like there's some really interesting stuff here, and the whole of the Ghostface mythos is really incredible, like when you really kind of look at it. And again, making Nev Campbell a standout star from these movies, outstanding. Making David Arquette a beloved actor because, again, supporting role, but the character of Dewey, memorable in terms of horror, like great supporting. Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox. You are not just Monica from Friends.
Yeah.
Again, really stretches what these people can do. And again, gave audiences, I feel, a modern slasher, horror, thriller, suspense mystery that I think a lot of people wanted because it was easily digestible. It's not Knives Out complicated. And it was fun. And that's what makes these movies so memorable. But like I said, I think there's more flaws than people are willing to admit. I think Member Berries gets this first 3 movies a lot of passes. But the first one is literally a masterpiece. The other 2, well, they're sequels.
They're sequels. They're the epitome of sequels, and there's nothing wrong with that because they also lay the grounds for what we're going to talk about next episode with 4, 5, and 6. Because I think when you have the bones of this house built on the teen power that was the late 90s and the early 2000s with these movies and the love of horror and the way that it was going and everything, then we bring it into Scream 4, I think was, what was it, 2011,
I want to say?
Is it 2011? Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, 2011. Scream 4 is 2011, which is, I think, like 7 years after Scream 3, if I'm not mistaken, or 11 years, actually, because is it 2000? Yeah, it is. I was going to say, yeah. Yeah, so 2000 on the nose. Sorry, I blanked there for a second, even though I just said the date. Yeah, so I mean, 11 years later, and they put new blood into it because it wasn't, the house was not dead. Like 2 and 3 didn't kill the franchise, quote unquote, obviously, but they put new blood into it, but they used the bones that were built with these 3 movies, and there's no arguing that. I mean, Sidney Prescott is in the Final Girl Hall of Fame forever and will be untouched at this point. I mean, there is no debating that these movies are important to building up what the Scream franchise has become, and I cannot wait to talk about those 4, 5, and 6 in the next episode because there's so much that carries over from this original trilogy into the later trilogy. But I think 2 and 3 absolutely have their rightful places in sequeldom, I guess you could call it, because they are exactly what people wanted at that time and got, and for the most part enjoyed. I mean, both movies were hits, if I remember correctly. So I think you can honestly say that, yes, without Scream, I think horror would be vastly, horror would be vastly different. So we are very lucky to have had these movies, but that first one, if you have not seen the original Scream in a bit, go back and watch it. It is absolutely everything you probably remember it to be, if not more. I can't say more than that. I think Scream is probably in my top 10 echelon of films that I will take to like my desert island at this point.
Agreed. Ken, your thoughts?
This initial trilogy, I think in hindsight, and we'll deal with that in a couple episodes when we rank them, but I feel like this trilogy, looking back at it, Scream 1 is a classic for a reason, but its sequels don't they don't build upon what was there and kind of elevate it even more than it already was. They just kind of play in the same playground. And I think the next trilogy kind of plays and elevates it as it progresses.
All right there, guys. So that is going to be our thoughts on the first 3 Scream movies. Like I said, we're going to be talking about 4, 5, and 6, and then we're going to rank these very much like we did with our Halloween franchise we did at one point on the podcast here. So once again, guys, we always appreciate you getting involved with the show. You can email us, feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We would love to hear from you. We are now primarily on Blue Sky, which if you check our social media, you can find us over there. We are still maintaining our Twitter account, just it looks good for our metrics, and so we can just pump out content. We'll keep using it until most people have transitioned over, because fuck
the
Elon.
Heat death of the universe.
Yeah, basically until the heat death of the universe. So I guess, Dave, if people wanted to find you, where would they have to go?
You can find me every Tuesday with my host Enrique Couto over at Do You Even Movie. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. We are movie podcasts that talk about movies that you probably have not seen, haven't seen in a while, or need to revisit. So we put out a new episode every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts at. You can also find me on Insta at David S. W. MA, which stands for David's Watching Movies Again, which is also my Letterboxd name as well. So you can find me on Instagram at David's Watching Movies Again. Find me at Letterboxd at David SMWA. And yeah, I mean that's where I be.
All right, and Ken, what about you, buddy?
You can find me Ken Reels pretty much everywhere. Primarily, if I'm gonna post something, it's probably gonna be on Blue Sky and then Twitter as a secondary. But and then also Instagram and stuff, but I don't necessarily use those. It's just more of a lurking thing. And then, of course, my letterbox is Ken Reels as well.
Fantastic. Maybe after this podcast, I'm going to have to start a letterbox thing, because hey, more writing is always good, and David's co-host Enrique always encourages me to keep writing, so I will be doing that as well. So anyway, guys, we are going to get out of here as I sweep up the popcorn from the floor of the Twig video store. We are going to be checking our caller ID. We are going to trust no one, especially the love interest. That's how we roll around here. So for This Week in Geeks Loose Cannon, we have been
David Denoyer of Do You Even Movie.
And Ken from This Anime.
And I've been Mike the Birdman saying, what's your favorite scary movie?
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Not in my movie.
Are either one of these any good? Sir,
What?
are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick! Change the channel!
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.